I never thought I'd be in this position, sitting in my living room, staring at a half-empty bottle of whiskey and wondering how my life went so wrong. My name is Jack, and I've been married to my wife, Emily, for 5 years. We were the couple everyone envied. Friends told us we were goals, but behind that facade was a storm brewing. It all started with the little things: her late nights at work, her sudden obsession with her appearance, and the way she'd flinch when I tried to touch her. I shrugged it off for months, convincing myself that life was hectic and maybe she just needed some space. But deep down, something felt off. I'd catch her on her phone, laughing at texts that made her smile in a way I'd never seen before. Each giggle felt like a dagger to my gut, but I tried to push those thoughts away. After all, I loved her. The turning point came one Thursday evening. I was coming home early for once, excited to surprise her with dinner. I parked my car and noticed Emily's car was already in the driveway. I entered the house to find it suspiciously quiet. I called her name, but there was no answer. My gut tightened as I made my way to our bedroom, and that's when I saw it, the unmistakable scent of another man's cologne lingering in the air. I could hear muffled voices coming from the bathroom, a place I typically never would have intruded. But my blood ran cold, and curiosity morphed into a desperate need to uncover the truth. I tiptoed closer, and I swear my heart stopped when I heard her voice, sultry and playful. "Oh, you're so much better than him," she cooed. I pushed the door open, and there they were, Emily, half-dressed, grinning at a guy I didn't recognize. My world crumbled. I felt sick, a mix of rage and disbelief. "What the hell is going on?" I shouted, my voice breaking the moment. Emily jumped back, her expression shifting from shock to anger. "Jack, what are you doing here?" she snapped, her eyes wide with panic. The guy scrambled, fumbling to pull his shirt down as he stumbled out of the bathroom looking like a deer caught in headlights. I could see the shame wash over her face, but instead of owning up to it, she turned the tables. "This is your fault. You're never around, and I've needed someone who actually cares about me," she spat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was blaming me for cheating. My head was spinning. I felt like I was on a crazy carousel, and no matter how hard I tried to run, it just kept spinning. "So, you think having sex with some wedding ring designer is the solution?" I shot back, my voice dripping with contempt. She rolled her eyes, looking for excuses. "You don't understand, you never listen. I've been unhappy for a long time." Her words felt like knives, each one cutting deeper than the last. I tried to reason with her, but the truth was finally out in the open. She had betrayed everything we had built together. As the reality of it sank in, I felt a wave of emotions crashing over me: anger, sadness, disbelief. I wanted to scream, to cry, to lash out, but all I could do was stand there, numb. I thought about our wedding rings, symbols of our love and commitment, now rendered meaningless. As Emily continued to make excuses, I realized I needed to think clearly. This was not just about her betrayal, it was about reclaiming my life. I stepped back, took a deep breath, and decided I wasn't going to let this destroy me. It was time to turn the tables. I knew I had to act, but first I needed a plan. I would make this a turning point in my life, a moment where I wouldn't just be the victim. I would find a way to take control and ensure that Emily faced the consequences of her actions. The thrill of revenge bubbled beneath the surface, urging me forward. And so began my journey of reclaiming my life, one that would start with selling the very symbols of our broken vows. After that explosive confrontation, there was no going back. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into an abyss, and I could either take a leap or turn away. I was done feeling powerless. I spent the night pacing around our house, my mind racing. The betrayal replayed in my head like a terrible movie on loop, and I couldn't shake the anger that fueled my resolve. The next morning, Emily acted like nothing had happened. She walked around the house, putting on a facade of normalcy. I watched as she poured coffee, her back turned toward me. The image of her with that damn guy flashed in my mind, and my blood boiled. If she thought I was just going to let this slide, she was dead wrong. I spent hours drafting a plan in my head. I didn't want to confront her again just yet. I wanted to catch her off guard. I knew she had her little routine, going to the gym, meeting her friends for lunch, and then heading back to the office. That week, I made a point to keep my distance, giving her the space to think I was still reeling from the shock of her betrayal. While she was off playing happy couple with her lover, I was meticulously planning my revenge. I needed to hit her where it hurt, and what better way than the very thing that symbolized our love, our wedding rings. I had no intention of keeping the ring she had worn while betraying me, and I knew it was worth a small fortune. I went online, researching local jewelers who bought used rings. I felt a rush as I filled out a form on a buying website, my heart pounding with each keystroke. The thought of taking back control gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in days. I set an appointment for that Saturday, knowing Emily would be out for brunch with her friends. As the week went by, I adopted a calm demeanor. I laughed with Emily, joined her on the couch for cheesy TV shows, and even helped her pick out an outfit for her meeting. She didn't suspect a thing, blissfully unaware that I was plotting my escape. Saturday arrived, and as soon as she left, I grabbed both of our wedding rings from the drawer where I had kept them. I looked at my band, worn and scratched, and the glimmering diamond on Emily's ring. I couldn't help but feel a mix of nostalgia and anger. These rings had once symbolized a commitment that had long since rotted away. I drove to the jeweler's shop, my heart racing with anticipation. The place was small, but the owner, a man named Steve, had a trustworthy air about him. I laid the rings out on the counter and he examined them closely. "These are beautiful," he said, his eyes lighting up. "You'll get a great price." I could hardly contain my excitement as he quoted me a figure that was much higher than I had expected. I felt an odd sense of satisfaction, almost like I was shedding the weight of my marriage as I handed over the rings. The moment I received the cash, a wave of liberation washed over me. With the money in hand, I felt a rush of adrenaline and clarity. I knew I wasn't going to just pack a bag and leave town. I was going to start fresh. I had long dreamed of taking a road trip across the country, a spontaneous adventure that I had always put off for better timing. Now seemed like the perfect time. I drove home with a new sense of purpose, planning everything out in my head. I would sell my belongings, pack essentials, and hit the road. The thought of freedom pushed me forward, and I couldn't help but smile. I was reclaiming my life, and Emily would soon realize what she had lost. When I got home, Emily was still gone. I started packing away things I didn't need, and each item I placed in a box felt like a step closer to my new life. I was fueled by a mix of anger and excitement, and I could hardly wait to execute the next phase of my plan. As the sun began to set, I felt a sense of peace. It was almost eerie how calm I felt after everything that had happened. I remembered my conversations with friends about how life could change in an instant, and this was one of those moments. I was ready to turn the page and write a new chapter, but I knew I had to make one more move before I left this life behind. I needed to confront Emily one last time and show her the consequences of her actions. I wanted her to understand the depth of her betrayal, not just with words, but with the reality of what she had lost. That was the final piece of my plan, and I would make it count. The days dragged on, filled with anticipation and a simmering excitement as I prepared to confront Emily one last time. It was a game of chess, and I was determined to be the one making the moves. I felt like a shadow of my former self, but I was ready to embrace the new Jack who was emerging from the ashes of betrayal. Finally, the day arrived. Emily was due back from her brunch outing, and I had meticulously planned everything down to the last detail. I waited in the living room, my heart pounding with every tick of the clock. The door swung open, and in she walked, chatting animatedly on the phone. I could hear the lightness in her voice, the carefree laughter that made me want to cringe. She turned to me, the smile fading slightly as she noticed the mood in the room. "Hey babe, how was your weekend?" she said, her tone too cheerful, too forced. I could see the confusion in her eyes, and part of me relished that moment like a predator watching its prey. "Sit down, Emily. We need to talk," I said, my voice steady but cold. She dropped her phone onto the couch, her smile replaced by a look of concern. "What's wrong? You look serious," she replied, her voice laced with false innocence. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts, knowing that this moment would set the stage for everything that followed. "I guess you could say I've had some time to think," I began, keeping my tone steady. About us, about our marriage and what happened last week. Her eyes widened and I could see the panic rising as she tried to backtrack. Jack, listen, I didn't mean for you to find out that way. It was a mistake, I swear. I just stop right there, I interjected, cutting off her excuses. You don't get to spin this. You had an affair, Emily. You cheated on me with some guy who designs wedding rings. I can't even comprehend the irony of that. She opened her mouth to respond, but I continued, driven by a mix of anger and clarity. I sold our wedding rings this week. You know, the ones that were supposed to symbolize our love and commitment. Yeah, I sold them. I needed to rid myself of those chains, and now I have the cash to start fresh. Her face turned pale, the color draining, as the reality of my words settled in. You sold our rings, Jack, you can't be serious, that's insane. She stammered, her composure cracking. Insane? What's insane is thinking you could betray me and that I wouldn't retaliate. You've completely destroyed what we had, Emily. You chose this path and now you have to face the consequences. Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a brief moment I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it quickly dissipated, replaced by the righteous anger that fueled my resolve. You don't get to play the victim here. I see you for who you really are, a person who would rather lie and cheat than confront their problems. Please, Jack, I'll do anything, I'll change, she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. We can fix this, I love you, I do. Love? What kind of love leads to betrayal? I shot back, my voice rising. You've shown me who you are, and I don't want any part of that. I'm not here to save you, Emily. I'm here to save myself. Her tears flowed freely now, and I felt a small sense of satisfaction watching her crumble under the weight of her choices. I'm leaving, Emily. I've already started packing and I'm hitting the road. I'm done with this toxic cycle. You'll have to figure out your own life without me. She fell silent, her sobs echoing in the room. I took a deep breath, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me as I realized I was finally taking control. I hope you take this as a lesson, I said, my voice steady now. You can't treat people like disposable objects and expect to walk away unscathed. As I turned to leave, I could hear her soft cries behind me, but I didn't look back. I had made my choice, and there was no room for doubt or regret now. I felt lighter, free from the weight of a marriage that had suffocated me. I was ready to start anew. Packing my things over the next few days was cathartic, each item I placed in a box symbolizing the life I was shedding. Clothes, mementos, and pieces of our life together, everything was either sold or tossed aside. I wanted nothing from the life Emily and I had built. As I prepared for my road trip, I felt a mix of fear and excitement. I had no solid plans, but that was the point. I chose to embrace the unknown, the thrill of hitting the open road with nothing but the clothes on my back and a heart that was finally open to new possibilities. In the end, I learned that sometimes betrayal can lead to liberation. I was breaking free and forging my own path, ready to explore life without the confines of someone else's choices. I knew I had a long journey ahead, but for the first time in a long time I felt hope. I was ready to embrace my new life, whatever it held. With my bags packed and a full tank of gas, I felt like a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. The horizon stretched out before me as I pulled away from our house, a house that had once felt like a home, but had now become a painful reminder of everything I was leaving behind. I was ready to embark on this new adventure, a journey that would not only take me across the country but also toward a new version of myself. I didn't have a specific destination in mind. I just wanted to drive. I let the road guide me, feeling the wind whip through the open windows as I cranked up the music, letting the tunes drown out any lingering thoughts of Emily. Each mile I drove felt like a step toward freedom, away from the betrayal and the lies that had consumed me. My first stop was a small diner in a town that felt like it was frozen in time. The kind of place where the waitresses still wore uniforms, and the coffee was strong enough to keep you awake for days. I sat at the counter, sipping my coffee and watching the world go by through the window. It was a strange comfort, knowing that my life was no longer tied to Emily's whims. As I listened to the chatter of the locals around me, I began to feel a sense of normalcy returning. It was refreshing to be surrounded by people who didn't know my story, who didn't have any preconceived notions about who I was. I could be anyone I wanted to be, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a spark of excitement about the future. I spent the next few days driving, stopping wherever the road took me. I explored small towns, hiked through national parks, and even met a few fellow travelers along the way. Each interaction reminded me that life was still full of possibilities, despite the heartbreak I had experienced. One evening, I found myself at a campsite in the mountains. I set up my tent, lit a fire, and sat under the stars, feeling a profound sense of peace. It was in that moment of solitude that I finally allowed myself to process everything that had happened. I thought about the love I had for Emily and how it had turned into bitterness and resentment. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I had poured so much of myself into our relationship, but I had forgotten to prioritize my own happiness. As I stared into the flames, I began to see the betrayal in a different light. Yes, I felt anger and sadness, but I also felt gratitude for the lessons it had taught me. I had learned to recognize the signs of an unhealthy relationship and, more importantly, to value my self-worth. I promised myself that I would never allow someone to treat me as less than I deserved again. The next morning, I packed up my campsite, ready to continue my journey. I had decided that I wouldn't just drive aimlessly forever. I wanted to find a place to settle down, somewhere that felt right. Over the next few weeks, I explored different cities, each with its own charm and character. I found myself drawn to the coastal towns, where the ocean met the sky and the salty breeze filled the air. Eventually, I wound up in a quaint seaside town called Pacific Grove. I wandered along the beach, feeling the sand between my toes and the waves crashing against the shore. There was something magical about this place, something that felt like a fresh start. I found a small apartment overlooking the ocean, and as I signed the lease, I felt a surge of excitement. This was it. This was my chance to rebuild my life. As I settled into my new home, I found solace in the routine of everyday life. I spent my mornings at a local cafe, sipping coffee and reading, and my afternoons walking along the beach. I took up surfing, something I'd always wanted to try but had never had the chance to do. Each day felt like a new adventure, and slowly, the heaviness of my past began to lift. But while I was finding my footing, I still had to confront the emotional aftermath of my relationship with Emily. I had made peace with my choice to leave her, but I hadn't fully processed the pain. I decided to seek therapy, and sitting in that small office filled with books and a warm ambience, I began to unpack my feelings. Talking about my experiences helped me realize that I wasn't defined by my marriage or Emily's betrayal. I was reclaiming my identity, and that was powerful. I learned to set boundaries, to trust my instincts, and to embrace vulnerability while also protecting my heart. As the weeks turned into months, I began to view my past not as a wound, but as a chapter in my life that had shaped me into who I was becoming. I was grateful for the lessons it had taught me, and I was finally ready to let go of the anger and hurt. The journey wasn't easy, but with each passing day, I felt more whole. I was ready to embrace new relationships, new experiences, and a new sense of self. The open road had led me here, and for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful, ready to forge ahead into whatever awaited me. I knew that I would carry the scars of my past, but they would no longer define me. I was stepping into a new life, one where I controlled the narrative, and I was determined to make it count. As I settled into my new life in Pacific Grove, there were moments when I would think of Emily and the whirlwind of emotions that had once consumed me. But instead of dwelling on the pain, I focused on the journey ahead. Every day was an opportunity to discover something new about myself and the world around me. I began to forge connections with the people in my community, and it felt good to be part of something again. One afternoon, while I was at the beach, I met a woman named Sarah. She was a local artist, painting the ocean scene in front of us, her easel set up right on the sandy shore. We struck up a conversation, and her warmth and creativity drew me in. I found myself captivated by her passion for life and the way she spoke about her art. It felt good to connect with someone who shared a zest for adventure and new experiences. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and I began to spend more time together. We explored the coastal trails, attended local events, and enjoyed casual dinners at cozy restaurants. It was refreshing to be with someone who was genuine and kind, and for the first time since my separation, I felt a spark of attraction. Sarah had a way of making me laugh, even on the days when memories of my past would creep in uninvited. As our relationship deepened, I found myself opening up about my experiences. I told her about my marriage, the betrayal, and the journey that had brought me to this point. To my surprise, she listened not with judgment but with empathy, validating my feelings and encouraging me to embrace the lessons I had learned. It felt liberating to share my story with someone who understood. With Sarah, I felt like I could be my authentic self. I no longer had to hide behind a mask of hurt or anger. I was free to explore the possibilities of what a new relationship could be without the shadows of my past looming over me. It was exhilarating and terrifying at the same time, but I was determined to embrace the opportunity for love without letting fear dictate my choices. The more time I spent with Sarah, the more I realized how important it was to have someone in my life who respected me and cherished me for who I was. It was a stark contrast to my previous relationship, and I felt grateful that I had taken the leap to leave the toxic environment I had been in. Every laugh we shared, every adventure we embarked on, reinforced the notion that I was deserving of happiness. However, I still had lingering doubts. Memories of Emily would sometimes wash over me, and I'd find myself questioning whether I was ready to fully invest in this new relationship. I had built up walls around my heart to protect myself, and even though I felt a connection with Sarah, those fears lingered. One evening, as we walked along the beach, the sunset painting, the sky in hues of orange and pink, I decided it was time to confront those feelings. I paused, looking out over the waves, the sound of the ocean calming my nerves. Sarah, I began, my voice steady but vulnerable, I want to be honest with you about where I'm at. I've been through a lot and there are times I worry that I'm not ready for something serious. She turned to me, her expression open and understanding. Jack, I appreciate your honesty. It's okay to have those feelings. We're building something new together and it's natural to have fears. I'm here for you and we can take it one step at a time. Her reassurance washed over me, and in that moment I felt the weight of my fears begin to lift. I realized that I didn't have to rush into anything. We could explore this connection at our own pace. It was a new chapter, and I wanted to approach it with openness rather than trepidation. I nodded, grateful for her patience, and we continued our walk along the shore, the waves crashing gently against the rocks. As the weeks turned into months, I learned to let go of the ghosts of my past. I embraced the good memories while acknowledging the pain. I started journaling my thoughts and experiences, using writing as an outlet for my emotions. It became a therapeutic way to process my journey, allowing me to reflect on how far I had come. One day, while sifting through my old belongings, I stumbled upon a box filled with mementos from my marriage. Photographs, love letters, and souvenirs from trips we had taken together. A mix of nostalgia and sadness washed over me as I flipped through the items. I realized that while those moments had been meaningful at one time, they no longer defined who I was. I took a deep breath and decided it was time to let go. I gathered the items and took them down to the beach, where I found a quiet spot. I felt a sense of closure as I burned the memories, watching the flames consume the remnants of my past. It was a symbolic act of liberation, a way to release the weight that had burdened me for far too long. As I stood there, watching the smoke rise into the sky, I felt lighter, freer. I was ready to fully embrace the present and the future, no longer shackled by the chains of my past. With every step I took away from the fire, I felt a renewed sense of hope. My relationship with Sarah blossomed, and as we navigated through life together, I discovered the beauty of building a partnership rooted in respect, honesty, and shared dreams. We encouraged each other to pursue our passions, and I found that I could open my heart again without fear of betrayal. I finally understood that healing was not a linear journey. It was filled with ups and downs, moments of doubt, and moments of enlightenment. But I was committed to this new path, knowing that I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I had learned the importance of self-love and acceptance, and I was ready to embrace the love that Sarah had to offer. As I reflected on the journey I had taken from betrayal to healing, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I was no longer the man who had been shattered by infidelity. I was a survivor, a warrior, ready to embrace life with open arms. My new chapter was just beginning, and I was eager to see where it would lead. The months rolled on, and as I settled deeper into my life with Sarah, I found myself reflecting more on the journey that had led me here. My days were now filled with laughter, creativity, and love, elements I had once thought were lost forever after my marriage crumbled. I had come to cherish every moment we shared, from lazy Sundays spent at home to spontaneous adventures along the coast. Sarah and I had developed a rhythm that felt effortless. We complemented each other, supporting one another's passions and dreams. She continued to create her art, and I often found myself inspired by her creativity. I'd started painting again, something I had loved doing before life had taken me down a different path. It was as if I was rediscovering parts of myself that had lain dormant for years, and each brushstroke felt like a step toward healing. One evening, we found ourselves at a local art gallery showcasing Sarah's work. As I watched her interact with guests, her enthusiasm contagious, I felt an overwhelming sense of pride. She was thriving, and I couldn't help but think how far we had both come. The gallery was packed, filled with smiles and genuine conversations, and in that moment I knew I had made the right choice in allowing myself to love again. Later that night, after the event had wrapped up, we walked hand in hand along the beach. The moon cast a silver glow over the water, and I felt the gentle breeze brush against us. I stopped, pulling her close, and I could see the happiness radiate from her. "You know, I never thought I would feel this way again after everything that happened with Emily," I admitted, my voice soft. "But you've shown me that it's possible to love and be loved without fear." Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling in the moonlight. "That's the beauty of it, Jack. We've both experienced pain, but we're not defined by our past. We can choose to create something beautiful together." In that moment, I felt a wave of comfort wash over me. I had spent so long holding on to the past, allowing it to dictate my present. But here I was, free and alive with someone who truly valued me. It was a feeling I had longed for, and I was ready to embrace it fully. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself thinking about my relationship with Emily less and less. While the memories of her betrayal had once haunted me, they no longer held power over my life. I had recognized the lessons learned from that chapter and transformed my pain into strength. I had emerged from the ashes, and my heart had opened to new possibilities. Then came the day that would solidify my commitment to Sarah. I had been waiting for the right moment to express how I truly felt, and I knew it was time to take a leap of faith. I planned a special evening, setting up a picnic on the beach with her favorite foods and a bottle of wine. I wanted this night to be memorable. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with vibrant colors, I felt my heart race with anticipation. We settled onto the blanket, enjoying the food and the beautiful view. After a while, I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. "Sarah, I know we've both faced our share of challenges, but you've brought so much light into my life. I love you truly, and I want to build a future with you." Her eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and joy flooding her face. She reached for my hand, her grip warm and reassuring. "I love you too, Jack. You've changed my life in ways I never expected, and I can't imagine my future without you." With the waves crashing gently behind us, I pulled out a small velvet box from my bag. My heart raced as I opened it to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "I want to take this step with you," I said, my voice steady but filled with emotion. "Will you marry me?" Tears filled her eyes as she gasped, a radiant smile breaking across her face. "Yes, yes, of course I will." As I slid the ring onto her finger, I felt an overwhelming sense of joy and hope. This was a new beginning, a commitment built on trust, love, and mutual respect, completely different from what I had experienced before. It felt right, and I knew in my heart that I had found my partner, someone who would walk beside me through life's adventures. As we embraced, I felt a sense of closure regarding my past. I had learned that love could be healing, that it was possible to rise above betrayal and build something beautiful. My journey had taught me resilience, self-worth, and the importance of choosing happiness. In the days that followed, we began to plan our wedding together. Each decision brought us closer, laying the foundation for a life filled with love and support. I was excited about the future we were creating, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Looking back, I could finally see the silver lining to the heartbreak I had endured. It had led me to this moment, to Sarah, and to a love that was genuine and true. I had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace everything life had to offer. As I reflected on my journey, I knew that I would carry the lessons from my past with me, not as burdens, but as reminders of how far I had come. I had learned to love again, and this time it was on my terms. I was no longer just a survivor of betrayal. I was a man who had reclaimed his life and found joy in unexpected places. And as the waves lapped at the shore, I smiled, knowing that this was just the beginning of a beautiful adventure.